Thank you. Thank you for that nice introduction. They used to just call me the out-of-body lady. So I usually like to know something about a speaker before I hear what they have to say. Therefore, I'll tell you a little about myself. I was born April 3rd, 1936, an Aries woman, in Charleston, West Virginia, a mountain woman, AKA hillbilly. Now, I got my PhD in cognitive psychology at the City University of New York with Dr. Schmeidler, Gertrude Schmeidler, as my mentor. I studied ESP in the laboratory for almost 20 years at the American Society for Psychic Research, ASPR. At some point, my work records will be available in the parapsychological archives at the University of West Georgia. I'm working on it. I served in the Army 60 years ago, and it had a negative impact on my avid patriotism at that time. I studied religious science with Dr. Raymond Charles Barker in New York, and it freed me from the fundamentalist religious terminology from which I had been suffering. I believe we are creative, invisible beings who own and operate bodies, but are not imprisoned nor limited by those bodies, and that it is possible to create your own reality whether you know it or not. You are what you believe yourself to be. What you can conceive, you can achieve, and then some, in my case. My spiritual demonstrations far exceed my imagination. So, now back to business. Even back in the day when they called me the out-of-body lady, I was a skeptic. I remember the first time I ever read about an out-of-body experience. I was transcribing a tape of an interview Dr. Osis at the ASPR had with a woman who had the experience. I couldn't believe it. I laughed and laughed, so much so that I made a copy of the page and showed it to my best friend, and then we had a good laugh. That was in 1967. 4 years later, the ASPR received a $270,000 bequest handwritten by an Arizona hard rock miner who wanted to know if we can survive death. Dr. Osis thought if we could demonstrate that something can leave the body during life, that may be something that can survive physical death. He assigned me to looking at that possibility. I read everything I could on the subject, including Charlie Tartt's description of how he studied the EEGs of his out-of-body subject. At the time, I was measuring EEGs of people in meditation. So I decided to study the EEGs of someone who is perceiving targets outside of visual range. I met Ingo Swann in 1971 when he came to an open house at the ASPR. He was intelligent, articulate, and our purposes for doing the research were in agreement, so we went to work. Ingo didn't like the term out-of-body experience and said, quote, "Since it is not at all established where the seat of consciousness is or exists at any given time," unquote, he thought that out-of-body was too generic and needed to be more specific. He described his exterior vision as, quote, "many attention units congregating at a distant point, sufficient enough to gain minimal perception away from the body, thereby enabling him discernment and judgment of the given target," unquote. He regarded out-of-body, quote, "as a primary life process, as a behavioral concept," and he felt the need to set up for himself metaphysical and ethical standards to govern the use and development of this ability. I agreed with him, but I was stuck with the out-of-body words because that's what I was paid to do. So in 1972, Ingo named 3 stages of the development of his abilities. 1, hey, how about that? I can do it. Happy and enthused. 2, well, I did it again. Impressed, but not excited. 3, why the hell can't I do it every time? Aggravated, frustrated. Well, Ingo was not afraid of his abilities, as so many researchers seem to be, as they tried to squelch or deny them. Ingo wanted to know more about how he was able to do the things he could do, so that information could be shared with others, that we might be able to have a leap in consciousness which would free us from our mistaken identity as physical beings, which causes so many of our problems, social and otherwise. The fear of the phenomena comes from an ethics problem, and that's why Ingo set up ethical standards. Now, is there a physical component to ESP interactions at a distance? What are these attention points, units, that Ingo speaks about, congregating at a distant point? There are many scientific results which show a person to be interacting at a distance. We have abundant PK results, so much so that PK is considered to be one of the 4 scientifically established ESP phenomena. We have Dr. Puthoff's magnetometer results, which he describes so eloquently. Ingo could change the temperature in an isolated chamber at a distance. This involves slowing down or speeding up the molecular activity. There was a woman out at Maimonides Hospital laboratory named Felicia Paris, and she could move the compass needle at a distance and on and on and on. Does anything go out of the body? What can we determine about our existence when we discover these light, kinetic, electromagnetic interactions? We did discover a loss of electrical activity in the EEGs when Ingo reported looking at targets outside of visual range, or when I directed him, at his request, to go exterior for short periods, which were marked on the EEG records. The left hemisphere showed a 16% decrease in amplitude, and overall frequency data showed a decrease in alpha activity during the exterior conditions. This decrease was more prevalent in the right hemisphere of his brain. The odds against these statistics occurring by chance were 1 in 1,000 on the right side and 5 in 1,000 on the left. It appears from all this that Ingo's brainwave activity did change when he reported going exterior. Charlie Tart also had a flattening of the EEG when he had his out-of-body subject. Ingo's heart rate and other functions of the autonomic nervous system remained normal. There appeared to be a cessation of the eye movements, the REMs, and Ingo thought this helped and would sometimes ask for a blindfold to keep his eyes still. My question, where did this energy, this electrical energy from the brain go, and in what form? Why is it more popular to study psychological theories of out-of-body than physical ones? Moving into the unknown is always a frightening business. It takes courage, adequate facilities, and dedication to ascertain how humans are capable of operating independently of their bodies, interacting with and creating a perceptible impact on the space around them. Sometimes one who attempts to bring light to this issue is criticized for believing in the out-of-body experience as an external event. It seems unscientific to me not to believe in this possibility until all the facts are gathered. After all, billions of people throughout history and across cultures have reported that they had this experience. And the main thing is they say they no longer fear death. This is an important human experience. Now, research has been done to support the theory that some organized energy may be detected during an out-of-body experience. Dr. Osis at the ASPR and Donna McCormick tested Al Tanis. In one experiment, he was located in a room several hundred feet from a light-tight room, and it was suggested that he try to place his consciousness, out-of-body entity, whatever you want to call it, in the light-tight room. Instrument printouts marked times of projection. An object was left in the room for Tanis to identify. He both identified the target and affected the photo multipliers. Then in another experiment, they detected kinetic effects at the apparent location of Tanner's out-of-body projection during perceptual testing. Here, Tannis was approximately 100 feet from the perceptual target, which had to be viewed from a certain location in space to identify it correctly. A shielded chamber was placed at that exact location to measure possible kinetic effects during the viewing periods. When Tannis was reportedly looking at the target, there were significant kinetic changes in the chamber as compared to changes when he was not reportedly projected to that area. Due to lack of funding, these important findings were never replicated, and further research along these lines was discontinued as far as I know. Meanwhile, out at Maimonides Hospital, Felicia Paris attempted to change the direction, sorry about that, of a compass needle approximately 4 meters away. Charles Arlington placed an opaque envelope with black and white film inside under the compass and along the path between Paris and the compass. When the compass needle moved, the film under the compass was almost totally exposed, and the other 3 packets of film were partially exposed. The amount of the exposure decreased as it got further from the compass. So it appears that the energy starts out weak and then becomes full-blown at the compass to affect the movement of the needle. Swan Ingo worked with Dr. Schmeidler at City College, and then he was able to change the temperature at least 1 degree at the site of an insulated thermistor as far as 25 feet away. When asked how he did it, he said he mentally probed for the thermistor inside the thermos. He also stated, quote, he used PK by exteriorizing, that is, going out of the body, unquote. Now, cloud chamber tests were conducted in Georgia by Miller, Auger, Worrell, and Ingo, produced significant psychokinetic effects within the chamber, sometimes at a distance of 600 miles. Trails of high-energy atomic particles were visible in the chamber when Swan expanded his consciousness to that location. Polaroid photographs were taken of the chamber. You can find references to most of these tests in my book, Out-of-Body Experiences, a handbook, and you can obtain this in ebook or audio form, as well as my second book, Conscious Evolution, from Crossroad Press. Of course, we all know about Ingo doubling the frequency of the signal from a decaying magnetic field at SRI, then stopping it altogether, to the amazement of the onlooking quark physicist. So choose your route for identifying any possible external component in these events and go for it. You might win the Nobel Prize. Think big. But remember, this is pretty scary stuff. And that could be why SRI went back to remote viewing by giving map coordinates. This worked so well, and the results were so phenomenal, the Defense Department took over with its tremendous funds and sought uses of remote viewing for military purposes. Did they find out how it works? Is it precognition, telepathy, clairvoyance maybe? Does any part of the viewer go to the remote location to obtain the information? I'd love to know if they applied their funding to find out more about our fabulous abilities and how we're able to do these things. I'm glad they sought uses for our abilities, but I would like to see them used to preserve, protect, help, and heal people living on the planet rather than find better ways to destroy each other. This is where the ethics problem comes in. All the findings urge us to continue our search for energy measurements in the body, around the body, and between the body and the affected target, doing what we may describe as projection or exteriorization or out-of-body experience. Remember, it hasn't been proven that we're in our bodies. That's just an assumption. We talk about our body as something we own. This is my hand. This is my head. And this is a most priceless gift given to us just for coming to the planet. What a computer. What technology. It allows us to create technology to mimic our ESP abilities. So you have remote control, PK, television, clairvoyance, telephone, telepathy. I never could deal with time. That's too mind-boggling. So getting results in experiments is exciting and fascinating and somewhat addictive. But we've been reporting results for about 200 years now, and it has made some impact on mass consciousness, more belief in ESP ability. Now, if we could understand how we do these things and find the practical uses for them which would enhance our experience on this plane of activity, we could take that leap in consciousness, which would give us a new self-image that could help us transcend so many social problems we are presently coping with as physical beings. We're so much more than that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Get me out of here.
Are we live? Okay, so I'm up here to take pictures and ask you a question real quick. First of all, where's that slide you had up a minute ago? We have this really cool looking slide, that one. I wonder if you could explain to the audience what this means.
Okay. When we did the perceptual testing with Ingo, when he was hooked up to the EEG hooking him up to the EEG, you see, he couldn't move without it showing up on the EEG. So this target was high above, about 12 feet above, facing the ceiling, and he was sitting in a chair. So when he went up to look at this target, and then you see he drew almost the exact thing that was up there on the platform. Now, this was the first time that we actually tried this. So it was thrilling beyond belief to see the accuracy of the response. And so that's when we really got started, and we tried all kind of different substances, different colors. We tried all kind of different things to see what would be easier to see. What could you see? Could you conceptualize if it was a number? Could you conceptualize along with seeing the form? Things like that.
Okay, so there's only one person in line. I wanted to actually give a little background about how you got here. All right. So, no, I'm going to tell my story here just for a second. So, I'd heard Janet Mitchell's name ever since I started hanging out with Ingo Swann back in 1984, but I'd never met her. And when we started the IRVA conferences, we'd gotten 1 or 2 or 3 into them, and I thought, Janet Mitchell would be an awesome speaker to have here. You know, I don't know her. I'd like to hear her story, because I know she had a lot of interaction with Ingo at first. In fact, you were involved in the early discussions about what to name this, right? And you were working with Ingo and coming up ultimately with the remote viewing, right? So I wanted to get her here, but nobody knew where she was, okay? Not even Ingo. I kept asking him, well, you found out where Janet Mitchell is yet? No, she's just disappeared. I fell off the radar. She might even be dead, you know? So then, not about 2 months ago, I think, 3 months ago, I get a call from Diane, and said, well, would you like to maybe have Janet Mitchell speak at the conference? I said, Janet Mitchell? Where did she come from? Right? And so with Diane's great help and Janet's willingness to participate, we have her here. This is a historical event. It really is, because she's one of the pioneers that we have never heard from until now. And so I just want to tell you that story so you know how much we appreciate having you here, Janet. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's really great hearing your story and your perspective. Question. So you showed traces of energy when Ingo Swann was manipulating something remotely. And so you talked about, for example, the film being exposed and so on. If we make a distinction between macro PK and micro PK, and if in making that distinction we say macro PK is some sort of energy transfer, and micro PK is simply manipulation of information at a distance, it seems like that, by that definition, what Ingo Swann was doing was macro PK and not micro PK. Do you make this distinction? Does that, how do you see this?
I think that this is what Ingo told me about his PK. He could move something that was already moving. So I look at macro like if you try to move something that's still. If you could just move molecules around which are already moving, this is micro PK, this would be easier to do. So this other woman out at Maimonides is the one who actually moved the needle. Ingo did a lot of micro PK, I would say, because he always wanted to affect something that was already in motion. I don't know if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Do you know if Ingo Swann ever tried bilocation? Being in two places at one time, basically out of body, but physically interacting with people at the other location.
I don't know of any time that he was ever seen or located in any other space.
Okay, I haven't heard a lot about bilocation. People, it used to be popular back in
Yeah.
the late 1800s, but I don't know of anybody really that's tried it nowadays.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Mitchell. I'll try and be brief. A couple days ago, I posted a photo on my Facebook feed of your book. I happen to have a signed copy of it. And my name is Peterson. I've written a couple books on out-of-body experience. I just wanted to thank you personally for your life's work and your analytical approach and how you've stayed grounded and scientific about all this. When author Graham Nichols, who's another out-of-body author, saw my post, he said, "If you see her, please give my regards. That book, your book, changed my life. And I'd love to connect with her, actually." So I just wanted to relay that to you from Graham Nichols as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Janet, thanks so much. I'm wondering if you ever heard Ingo say anything about how he would like things to go after he died. And, you know, as a second part to that question, I'm wondering if anybody, any mediums have attempted to contact him. Perhaps that could be a presentation for next year. And I'm just wondering, since you knew him so well personally, if he ever spoke of anything of that nature post his death.
Oh, I didn't know Ingo toward the end. I was in Arizona, and you know he was in New York, so I don't know about that. I don't know if people have gotten messages from him. I respect him very much. I'm here to honor his work, and so that's what I have to say about that.
We have time for just a couple more questions, and I might be the third question if that's okay. But
hello, it's so nice to meet you. I'm going back a little bit and kind of a personal question, but I think it might help some of the younger people. I'm interested in the impetus of your decision to pursue your PhD in that time period, coming from your background in your younger years.
I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
A little bit about your personal impetus to pursue your PhD in parapsychology. What was your main motivation, and how did you come from your...
I was looking for my life purpose for years. What am I here for? What am I here for? I saw on TV the work out at Maimonides Hospital on dream telepathy. I looked at the TV. I was in my 20s. I said, that's it. That's what I want to do. And away I went, and I just tried to contact any scientist I could in New York. Can I help you? Can I do anything? I volunteered. You know this. You know how you do. If you want something bad, you get it.
Thank you.
Dr. Mitchell, thanks so much for your presentation. In conversations I had with Ingo about the thermistor experiment and raising the temperature of the area around the thermistor, he also mentioned to me that there was a negative drop of temperature in the back of the room corresponding to the positive. Could you speak more about that?
Well, you see, the idea was to see if he could lower the temperature or raise the temperature. So this was Gertrude's idea: lower the temperature, raise the temperature.
But it was simultaneous, meaning to say that it kind of corresponded with the laws of energy of not being able to be destroyed, but merely displaced or changed. So what I'm saying was it was a simultaneous effect of a differential where the thermistor observed an increase, and in the room there was a corresponding decrease, meaning to say that there was like a 0 point on the actual energy. He manipulated the energy but did not add any energy. Is that correct?
I don't know. I don't know that. He put his attention units inside the thermos.
Right.
And if she said to raise the temperature, he would try to speed up the molecules. That's what I understand. And if she said lower the temperature, he would try to slow down the molecules. So that's as much as I know. Now, we did it with other people. After that, we took a group of just college students who may or may not even believe in ESP. And just by putting their attention on that, they could change the temperature, but they couldn't do it in the direction that she was asking them to. But you know, just by putting your attention on something, you affect it. As we know in physics, the observation changes things.
That's right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Janet. I really appreciate what you commented on regarding the ethics and kind of the implications of your research. But also in particular with respect to the models that we create for understanding the phenomenon. And I wondered if you could comment a little bit further, you know, through my own experience and through the experience of some of my colleagues, it seems that sometimes the models for which we create to understand these phenomena are also rooted and biased by our three-dimensional embodied perspective. And that perspective seems not to apply when we're having this out-of-body experience. And when you're in an OBE, you may apply a completely different model for how reality really works. And I'd ask if you could just comment to that.
Mm-hmm. Why don't you ask a hard question? I don't think I could get to that. I'm sorry.
Well, Janet, I want to add my unbelievable appreciation that you've come here to talk about this. Of course, when Ingo came to SRI and we did that initial experiment with the magnetometer that you mentioned, nonetheless, what actually really motivated us taking even more looks at it were his descriptions of the experiments that he did with you. And it was really clear that the kinds of experiments that you had set up, that you just described, were done with such meticulous thought and such good controls that getting those results, and of course I saw those results that you showed, that actually added a lot of motivation for us to take it seriously. So I have to say that the fact that we continued down that path was really in large part due to what you had done, and he spent a lot of time describing in detail your attitude, your approach, what you required, and that all went into what it took for how we would design our experiments. So I'm unbelievably appreciative of what you did there, because that was a platform that really made it real for us to take off and do what we did. Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Hal. I appreciate it. You want to try again?
No, I think on to coffee unless you're...